Hi students, this week is the first part of our data analysis unit for this year. Before you continue with this video, make sure that you have watched the two videos on Canvas in your module. They are both very short, going over dot plots and then mean, median, mode, and range. Once you have done that, you can print out the notes that go along with this video. So if you haven't done those things, go ahead and pause this video now. As always, if you do not have a printer, a piece of paper will do fine for the notes. You just want to write down the definitions and then practice the examples that I'm going to show you today. Okay, your notes should look like this. And what we're looking at this week is specifically a type of graph called a dot plot, or it can be called a line plot. And then next week we're going to continue with more types of displays for data. But with all of those, there are certain measures that we use to look at data, and those are called our measures of center. So, the meaning of measure of center, it's a way of summarizing the data by providing a central point of data. So when you're looking at a lot of numbers and you're trying to make sense of those numbers, these measures of center can help you with that. And when you get older and you read research studies, you'll see these words in the data analysis. The first one is mean. It sounds weird. It's spelled like the word mean, like you're being mean to me. Stop it. But it's a measure of center also. It's a measure of center in which the average of the data is taken. So mean and average, they mean they're the same thing. They're synonyms. If I say average, that's the same thing as finding the mean. In normal life, we usually talk about average. In math, we will say the word mean. So, in order to find the average or the mean, you are going to find the sum of all the data points. You're going to add up all the numbers in your group. After you've done that, you're going to divide that sum by the number of data points. So if you're looking at grades and you've taken 4 things in the class, so you have 4 grades, you would add up those grades, get the total or the sum, and then divide that by 4 to get your average in the class. The mean can also be thought of as determining the fair share. So if you have different numbers, the average is it's like the middle point of all of that. It's mathematically exact. We'll talk about another term that means middle a little bit later on. But if we want it to be completely fair and even, we would find the mean or the average. So here's an example problem. It says the list below shows the shoe size for 8 students in Mr. Perdito's class. These are the shoe sizes of these students. We want to find the sum of those shoe sizes and the mean. So first we're going to add up the different shoe sizes. There are 2 here that have decimals in them. So when we are adding, we want to make sure that we line up those decimal points if we're doing it by hand. Go ahead and on your scratch sheet of paper or your notes, add up these numbers to find the sum. Okay, if you added correctly, you should have gotten 88. If you did not get that, just go back and check. Maybe you left something out. Maybe you did not line up your decimal points correctly. So 88 came from adding these shoe sizes. There's 8 students in the class, so our next step is to find the mean. And just like it says up here, we take the sum and divide that by the number of data points. We're going to divide 88 by 8. And that's pretty easy math to do in your head this time. It's not always going to be that easy. Sometimes you have bigger numbers. Sometimes when you take the mean or find the average, you're going to end up with an answer that's a decimal. That's okay. For this particular one, 88 divided by 8 is very easy. That means the average or the mean shoe size for his class is a size 11 shoe. And you can always check for reasonableness. If I look at these numbers, they're all pretty close to 11. So if I were to get something like 2, that wouldn't make sense because all of these numbers are smaller than 2. So just check for reasonableness when you're doing these problems, just like you would any other problem in math class. Okay, so that is mean or average. Mean and average are very useful in school to find your grades. That's how the software we use for your grades each 6 weeks works. It's calculating your daily grade average, your test grade average, and then using percentages. But averages are also really important in a lot of things. They do average rainfall for certain areas in the world. There's average use, that somebody that runs a business, when they're ordering, let's say it's a restaurant, they're ordering product, they would look at the average use over a couple weeks so they can predict how much they're going to need of certain things. So it has a lot of uses. Those are just a few. It's something you're going to keep using for the rest of your life. So make sure that you get this down this week. Okay, the next measure of central tendency is median. Median is a word you might have heard before when you're driving down the road. Sometimes there's a little concrete barrier in the middle of the road separating the lanes of traffic. So that's how I like to remember median. Median is the measure of center in which the middle of the data is determined. So just like a median would be in the middle of the road, median means the middle of the data. And just really quick, in case you don't know what I'm talking about with median, it can be concrete like this in the road. It can be grass. It can be painted. In Texas, we have a lot of concrete medians like this one over here. So just so you can get that visual in your mind to help you remember what median means in math. So median, middle. When we find median, it's pretty easy, but there's some steps you have to be careful not to forget. So first, you have to put the data in order from least to greatest. A lot of people forget that step and they get it wrong when it should be very easy to get right. Once you do that, you find the middle of the data set and you have the median. If there's not an exact middle number, so for example, if you have an even amount of pieces of data in your set, you are going to have to find the average or mean of the two middle numbers. So let's look at an example here. It says the following data set represents the number of broken cookies in a test of 9 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. So our numbers, as you notice, they are not in order right now. Our first step is we're going to have to make a list of the numbers in order from least to greatest. So go ahead and do that right now. Okay, I've started making my list, and just a tip, when you have a lot of numbers that you have to put in order, I like to mark them off as I go. So I started with the 2 zeros, then I counted up. I have 4 number 1s, then I have 2 number 2s, and a 3. So if you have a long list, that's just a technique that you can use. Okay, now that I have my numbers in order from least to greatest, and important to note, if the number occurs in the set more than one time, you list it. However many times it's in your set, that's how many times you're going to list it as you're making this line from least to greatest. And then you want to find the middle. One technique that I think is pretty easy is just take 1 from each side until you've found the middle. Now this data set is nice. We do have 1 number in the middle, and so it's very easy to tell that the median is 1. Sometimes, like I said, if you have an even amount of numbers, let me just do an example. So let's say we have a 2, a 4, and a 5. If we take a number from each side, we take those 2 away, there's nothing left. So our middle is right here between 2 and 4. These numbers are pretty easy. Think about a number line. What number would be exactly between 2 and 4? 3. That's pretty easy to figure out. Sometimes the numbers are a little trickier and you would have to find the average. So you would add the 2 numbers. 2 plus 4 is 6. I added 2 numbers, so I'm going to divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that would give me the same answer. So that is another thing that might happen as you're doing more practice with this. If it's an odd amount of numbers, it's nice and easy. If it's an even amount of numbers, you have to do a little bit more thinking. Okay, I'm going to end this video before we start the second page of the notes so I don't run out of time.